But yeah, we'll jump in if you guys want to give me a quick rundown of what you guys do. What does your business look like?
Yeah, sure. I can start. So Ryan and I met 13 years ago back in college, and we kind of knew like, hey, maybe we would do something together later in life, but not sure what. We went into the workforce, realized, I'm not sure if this is it. I'm not sure if this is the route that we want to go, at least in terms of like long term and the the like foreseeable future. So we lived together, and then we were always talking about personal finance, real estate investing, entrepreneurship, and not really doing much, but just knowing that was in the back of our head. And then when I was 26, I bought a primary residence that I house hacked. Lived in one unit, lived in one room, rented out the other 2 bedrooms to my good friends. And Ryan and I were always close. And he saw after I did that, I bought another rental property. And he was like, "Dude, we've been talking about this. Like, let's partner up. Like, I know we've been talking about it, and you went out and did it." And he had a primary residence at the time. So we decided not only to go into partnership with buying rental properties and doing those BRRRRs that you were talking about, but starting a podcast. So we started our podcast, the Wealth Juice podcast, in April of 2020, as soon as COVID hit, because we were not going to just sit around and wait for,
Yeah.
who knows what, right? So we started the podcast. We started buying a couple properties here and there, and then we were able to organically network with individuals like yourself and other really successful investors to kind of bring them up to their level. So, 1 unit turned to 2, turned to 4, turned to 8. And then we started to partner, and we now have over 70 units, some of which we own just the 2 of us, some of which we own in partnerships, but it all came through the networking through the podcast. And now we have a community that we teach people how to buy their first and next rental property, because we've kind of seen and heard the stories and been able to consolidate for people. So
Nice.
I probably left some out along the way.
It's fine. Take us back a little bit to when you said you guys got into the 9 to 5 or W-2 world. What did you get into? What were you doing?
Yeah, I can take this. So we both, in one form or fashion, got into sales, right? So we're big believers on getting your active income up in order to get into real estate. I think a lot of people try to get in with low and no money down to start, and that's more of an advanced kind of strategy, as we've kind of learned throughout the game, essentially. So we got into sales. We had a salary and then commission based, right, on top of that. So we got up to 6 figures pretty quickly, and we started at the same company. Cory branched off to another company, and then that's kind of where our journey began. We actually ended up living together, as he mentioned, and we would riff all the time, talk about the FIRE movement and how we could potentially get out of these 9 to 5s. We were like, are we really going to do this until we're 67? There's got to be another way. We always had the bug. My family is comprised of all entrepreneurs, and same with Cory. So we were always told, you got to work for yourself to make the big squeeze here in life. And we didn't know when that would be, but kind of felt that itch down low, or ran in our blood. And then we decided, let's partner up on this thing. He took, as he mentioned, he took down his first property. I saw him post on Instagram with like the finger up, like the one, like he got one done. I'm like, dude, I can't believe you did it. Like, you went back to back. You bought the primary, then you got the regular. Like, I'm in. What do we got to do? And so we partnered up there. But I say that to say we had a big back, like we had cash coming in from our sales jobs, and we were able we parlayed our skill sets from sales into negotiation, getting deals done, and then building a business essentially.
What did you guys sell? What was your sales job?
I can start. I was in ticket sales, and then for an NBA franchise, and then Cory also, I believe it was insurance sales to start.
Well, that was the worst job I ever had. I hated it so much. Right out of school, I was doing cold calling for employee benefits, and I was like, "What is this life? Like, this thing sucks." So I did that, and then I went into I ran youth camps for the 76ers for a little while, and then see the hat, and then I went into a family business where we sell signage for hospitals, education institutions. So that was just really to help my family out. And I learned the trade of sales and the trade of work, and like also working in a family business, which I consider Ryan and our business. It's a family business.
Yeah.
Like, it's the 2 of us, and we're like brothers. So we took a lot of those skill sets, and then real estate was a thing that was like, okay, I want to do this, but I also want to teach people after we've established ourselves how we did it, so that we can see success in others.
Yeah, I think sales skills, I came from that background too. I used to run a Foot Locker store. I think that sales skills are something that it's almost like as good as a trade. Like, you have your electricians, your HVAC, your roofers, your carpenters. I think people that can learn the skill of sales, or the art of sales, are going to be set in life for a long time, because once you know how to sell something, it doesn't matter what the object is. It's just the same process. You're just going to go and implement this piece here, and you're going to learn the product, and you're going to find the audience for that product, and just repeat the process. So I love that. Let's jump to the BRRRR. I want to get to the first BRRRR that you did. Cory, you bought your house hack, but then the second one a BRRRR?
No, well, here's the thing. This is how little I knew, dude. So I was like, yeah, you buy a property and it cash flows and you don't have to fix it up, right? Like, you don't have to do any of that. And I tell the story when I go on the podcast, like literally day one, on my primary residence, there was water in my basement, right? So I had to deal with that. Day one of the rental property, it was raining through my windows, right? So I'm like, oh my God, like I didn't know you had to fix up anything. So that was like, just kind of like jumping out the plane, building the parachute on the way down. If you want to talk about a BRRRR, Ryan and I did one like probably 6 months later where we actually used, I don't know if this is what the product is called. It was called a home style loan, actually, where like you put 15% down, they funded the renovation. So we bought a property for $130,000. It was an estate sale that we got from our lawyer. And the lady had passed away. We were dealing with the son. He wanted nothing to do with it. He left us the property after we bought it, and with all the furniture in it. And we were like taking furniture out. I remember this. And then we spent about $50,000 on the renovation. And it was mostly cosmetic, except for we had to replace a roof. We had to do like an entirely new concrete basement because there was like the concrete floor was like bubbling up. So that was like $15,000. So we wrapped that within the mortgage product, and then it appraised for about $275 at the time. This was a few years ago. So we were bought for $130, put like 50, 60 in, all in for $190 ish. And then it appraised for like about $80,000 more. We actually didn't refi. This was like wet behind the ears. We didn't even really know that you were supposed to refi. So we have equity in this property that we're able to play with. But that's kind of the story of the BRRRR, and it was just a single family residence in South Jersey. So that right there was like creating the connection with the lawyer, right? Somebody that Ryan knew through a second degree of separation. One of his clients at his job owns a title company. The guy who owned the title company introduced us to the lawyer, and then that created deal flow for us for a couple other projects that we've done. And so that was the story of the first BRRRR, kind of not knowing what we didn't know. And it ended up working out, but only because we were like, hey, we're just in this, we're doing it. And we didn't really know much going in.
So you guys got 70 doors now between the two of you. And what does the business model look like?
Some of which we own in partnerships.
Okay.
But yeah.
Gotcha. What does the business model look like now? Like, are you guys continuing to use the BRRRR strategy to grow your portfolio, or have you moved to a different strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I can start, and then I'll let Rye kind of like provide color. So we bought a few properties ourselves, 8 units total. And then what we realized is that the people that we were interviewing on our podcast and that we were networking with on social media were actually way better operators than us. So Ryan and I buy property in the Florida market, just north of Tampa. That's our goal now for the two of us. We're buying single family and small multifamily where we would do 50-50. But we're also partnering with operators in the New Hampshire market and the Phoenix market to do larger scale syndications. And that is bringing our skill set of investor relations, raising capital, marketing, and the sales aspect that you mentioned, as well as doing some underwriting for operators who can find deals and bring them to us. So we have an 18-unit project that we're general partners on in New Hampshire. We have a 43-unit project in the Pocono Mountains, and then another 7-unit in the Pocono Mountains, and a ground-up development project in Arizona. So we've created relationships with operators that we're able to parlay the skill sets. But the two of us are going to do the BRRRR method in the Florida market. That's our next, where we can just build our personal portfolios down there.
Gotcha. So let's evolve as much as we can for somebody that's just getting started in the real estate world. Can you tell us some good stories about either home runs that you hit in the BRRRR or some good rental properties that you've come through, how you got them, what you did with them renovation wise, if you actually did the refinance, and what you got from that when you did it?
Yeah, sure. So a couple of here's a good example. I mean, this was in 2021. We bought a duplex for $175,000. Now the rate really helped. Mm-hmm. Getting it at like a 3.2% interest rate, but we bought it for $175,000. yeah, it was amazing. $175,000. We fixed it up a little bit. We put new flooring in. We did some sprucing up, but not like a crazy renovation. But we were able to rent one side, a 2-bed, 1-bath on one side, 2-bed, 1-bath on the other side. We were able to rent that for $1,500 per side, which is pretty wild on a $175,000 property,
What
right?
market
So you're
is
at
that?
like, this was in the South Jersey market.
Okay.
We found this through a realtor. Like, that was somebody that we, again, created a relationship with. It was on the MLS. We were able to rent that out. We owned that property for about a year and a half, and we were seasoning it. Actually, it's funny that you mentioned the refi. We were about to do a refi, and you wanted the good, but here's the bad and the ugly as well. The property actually burned down.
Oh, God.
Which is the real estate, it burned down. It was not our fault, not the tenant's fault. It was the neighbor's property that got caught on fire, and it kind of brushed over to ours. And we ended up having, the whole deal with insurance, but it ended up paying us out a significant portion, more than it was worth. So we're, obviously you pay capital gains on that, but we lucked out, and then we moved that into a new property, kind of trading the equity from the one property into another. But
how did you find out that it caught on fire? Walk me through that.
You take it, Cory.
Say that. So, all right, I missed the question.
How did we find out it caught on fire?
Oh yeah. Okay. Here we go. So we have a property manager, and they were great. And it was 11 p.m. On a Tuesday night in February, and we get a call from our Google Voice from our tenant, and I'm like, I was actually in bed. I didn't answer, but I got they never call us, right? Because they always call our property manager. So there would be no reason for them to call us. And then I listened to the voicemail first thing in the morning, 6 a.m. I remember texting Ryan and being like, our tenant said there was a fire there. And you can't tell how bad it is. I don't know if there's some char on the outside of the house, and Ryan worked close to where the property was. So he's like, I got to go. I got to check it out. And when he got there, it was like, it was the real deal. Like, the entire garage was gone. So yeah, go ahead, Ryan. I know you have more to say.
Yeah, let me jump in here on this one, because it's funny. You have two perspectives here, right? So Cory heard it then. I wake up to a text from Cory at, I think it was like 5:30. He's like, dude, property caught fire. I'm like, what? And so then we had a shared phone app, right? For the tenant and the property manager, so we both could get calls. And then there's a voicemail on there, and it was kind of like brushed off. Like, you couldn't really hear it great, but it was like, hey, just my home caught on fire. Like, the tenant had been there. She's Section 8 tenant. She had been there for like 20 years. So like, considered it her home, right? It's like, my home caught on fire. I know you guys are the owners, but I wanted to go right to you versus the property manager. Like, call me when you can. I'm like, oh my God. So couple things here on like how we navigated the situation. It was on my way a little bit further than my commute to work. And I was like, Cory, I don't think I can go a full day without going to see this place. Like, so literally just got up then, started driving down. On my way down, or as I'm like up in the morning, I'm researching like, hey, how to deal with property damage or property fires. And a podcast episode came up, and this is just the highlighting the benefits of podcasts and knowing people in high places is Chad Carson. People probably know him as Coach Carson in the space. So that'll resonate with your listeners. He had an episode on how to deal with property fire, because something happened to him in one of his properties down in Clemson, and his went burned to the ground, how to deal with tenants, how to deal with insurance. So I'm listening to that podcast as I'm driving down to our property that caught on fire, taking voice notes, sending things to Cory. I'm like, Cory, listen to this. So we basically, by the time I got there, we had a full outline and plan of action on exactly what to do. Once we figured out how deep the burns were, at first it just looked like the side of the house was kind of cosmetic. We had someone go in there, like one of the windows was already boarded up from the fire department and things. And we started having conversations, calling around to the people that we needed to, found out that the bones of the property, right, were charred. And like, we do not have the expertise, being that we were new investors at the time, to go in and re-renovate this, build it out to something else. So we figured out everything. We figured out everything with insurance. We had a great policy, thank God. And funny enough, we ended up selling this property down the line. I believe it was like we sold the land for $50,000 or something like that to another investor who ended up putting a quadplex there. So it was just really interesting how the cycle of this thing works, where something, one man's trash is another man's treasure in a way. But I did want to give you the play-by-play. We also put out an episode on how we dealt with it, so people could go listen and as a reference point, because you need to plan for the worst, though you hope it never happens to you. We've dealt with fires, we've dealt with hurricanes. We have an Airbnb down in Tampa. 2 of these bad boys just came through. Luckily, nothing crazy happened besides a fence getting knocked down. But just wanted to give your listeners, the good, bad, and the ugly. Like, You
What
can
about
weather the storm.
what happened with the tenant?
The tenant, she moved out, and then she got another. She was living with her sister, and we told her that we don't own the property anymore. So once we sold it, and I don't actually know what her situation is right now, but she was fine. Nobody was injured. I don't know if that's where you were alluding to, but nobody was injured.
For me, the insurance thing is like typically you have insurance, but that doesn't cover like their contents and stuff. Did she have an insurance policy in place for renter's insurance?
Yes. Yeah, so she had homeowners insurance or renter's insurance, I should say,
yeah.
and that covers them for a certain period of time. So it did cover everything. None of her stuff got like completely charred and burned down. Like she got out of there and with most of the things that she needed. So luckily, it was the best. I tell you, it was the best worst case scenario. Like like insurance paid for most of the things. They covered tenants. No one got injured. It wasn't even our tenants that caused it. It was kind of like we just got stuck in a weird, because of our property was the end unit, things blew down to ours, and that's kind of where the fire ended. I'll tell you, it's interesting.
Ended up making money on this at the end when you sold the land. What did you end up walking away from? The headaches and the process of trying to navigate a house fire, and then at the end you walked away with what?
It's a great question. We walked away with a significant amount of money. So the property was probably worth about $250,000. Our mortgage was about $120,000, and our insurance payout was like $340,000.
Wow!
So we paid off the mortgage, sold the property, and there's something called, for your listeners, there's something called a 1033 like kind exchange. Yep. It's very similar to a 1031. But we have 2 full calendar years from the date that it burned down to trade the property to defer taxes. So we are going to owe whatever the capital gains is. I don't know if it's short or long term, probably roughly 20% of a $220,000 gain. So our goal is, and we actually haven't used that company to buy another property yet, but we have until the end of 2025 to purchase another property that is just cost more than the property that we bought at the time of purchase, so more than $175,000, and then we can defer the gain. If not, we pay the capital gains taxes in 2025.
Nice.
And instead of spending the money, we deployed that into other investments.
Yeah,
some of them were some of these bigger projects and things. And so we acted like, hey, we never had this money, so we're just essentially trading up one property to the next to keep ourselves in the game. I think a lot of people could, maybe go buy something fancy, go out to some nice dinners, but we decided to keep it running as a business. And as Cory mentioned, we can, as long as we buy within that specific business, then we can defer the gains, which is awesome. So that's another benefit of having an LLC versus having it in your own name. And so just food for thought for your listeners as you go through this, like protect yourself on the asset front, have the LLC set up, but then also make sure you have a very good insurance policy.
Yeah, that is probably the best thing. And that's a great spot for us to end with today, is turning a house fire into something that really benefited you guys good. And at the initial response, I know for me, if I were to get that call, I'd be sick to my stomach. Like, oh my gosh, there's a house fire.
Oh, we were.
But for you guys to be able to take that experience and turn it into something that really was beneficial for you and helped pivot you and put you in a position where you can continue to grow the business, that's like the best possible outcome. Nobody got hurt. And you guys were able to buy more properties. So give us.
Yeah, you kind of have to roll with the punches there. I mean, it's one of those things that you just, things happen in this game, and we've seen it from all angles. And the more you approach it with, what can we do versus, woe is me, I think is the better approach. Now, that's not to say we weren't both freaking out day one. We were. It was. I remember like waiting for this check to come in and not knowing what was happening. It was brutal, but we knew just stay the course, and we're going to deploy it into something bigger and better that cash flows more. And no one was hurt, so it was all in all a win.
What's a tip for somebody that's listening to this podcast and is either in the midst of a fire themselves or considering getting rental properties? What's some parting advice for them today?
I would say surround yourself with people who have done what who have done what you're looking to achieve.
Yeah.
That's the number one thing, because when I bought my first property, I didn't have a mentor to call when it was raining inside my house. I was like, called a lawyer that I knew did real estate one time. He's like, why are you calling me? Right. So surround yourself with people who are doing what you want to do. latch onto them, provide value to them, join a community that they have, right? Something of that nature, so that those people can show you the way, and they're not going to take you from step 1 to 100, but they can take you to from step 1 and skip steps 2, 3, 4, and 5 to get you to 6. And that can allow you to scale a lot faster. So that would be my advice: is surround yourself with people who are doing what you are looking to achieve.
And I have something here too. I will say we recently started a coaching and mentorship program for people that are starting out. So if you are interested, you can reach us on Instagram at WealthJuiceOfficial. Just quick plug there. But my feedback here is, outside of surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals and people that have gone through it before you to elevate to their level, their contact will be made. You need to plan ahead of time. I see too many people getting reactive, and they always deal with things when they happen. The best thing we did was getting proactive and building a fortress around ourselves, so that way, in the event anything happens, or when it happens, right, you're protected and you don't have to question it. Like, there's nothing worse than checking in on your insurance policy to, hey, do I have one? How much is it actually worth? Like, knowing what you have in your back pocket is huge. And you don't need to show your cards all the time, but also having a great real estate attorney was massive. We got to look at the deal we got for it. And then, we were able to call him and ask about his experience with this too. So we had a team around us. We had mentors around us to lean on. And so I truly, I know, you say that fluttering stomach feeling, and no one wants to hear your fire burns down, but I've been through a lot of stuff. I've worked in customer service for a long time, and sales and customer service, and I've just gotten punched in the face left and right. And I really keep an even keel. I think probably a little bit more than Cory, because I've just seen so many things go bad, and I've just dealt with them over time. So I think it helps to have people, or in your partnership, one person that can just remain steadfast and be the anchor. And Cory, I liked that Cory was on it. He was I was dude, we're going to be fine. He's no, we need to move on this now. Right. So there was an even balance of us keeping each other level and then also attacking this thing. But number one thing is, for me, just plan for your future ahead of time. This can go with life, business, the pursuit of happiness, all of it. People that are reaching that 1% or becoming the best version of themselves, and whether it's in business or in life, they've planned for the future, and they don't wait for the future to happen for them. And that can come from protection or chasing your dreams. So I just want to put that out there for people that are, maybe going through the mundane 9 to 5, or they're just silent lurkers thinking about they should get into real estate. You should get in the game, and you should take action and listen to this podcast for inspiration to go start it. And if just one thing we said resonated with you to start your journey, it's worthwhile for us, because we were once in your shoes, 5 years ago, with no units and no team and no business. And we just want to show people what's possible. Really.
Yeah, for sure. It's all about how you react to the situation, but you got to know it's all going to work out. It's all going to be fine. Just don't lose your mind in the heat of the moment. I think that's one thing that can ring true with all of us. Guys, thank you so much for being on today's episode. Look forward to getting this out there for everybody to hear, and bring you back on in the future.
Thanks for listening to the DealMachine Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please leave us a review and follow along wherever you're listening to your podcast.